when there's an alternative to the legacy media that people actually watch and engage with, it's very bad for left-wing narratives because sometimes it just exposes bad things that people on the left are doing. So, for example, now it's a national issue. Apparently, there was a Drag the Kids to Pride family-friendly drag show. Now, if you're wondering what the hell a family-friendly drag show is, the answer is it doesn't exist. It is a contradiction in terms. But there was a family-friendly drag show at a Dallas bar called Mr. Mister. Get it? Like Mr. Mister? because it's a drag bar, right? Which you might wonder why it's appropriate for small children to be visiting any bar, let alone a drag bar, which is inherently sexual. You might wonder why that would be appropriate. You would be correct. Some of the footage has now been released, and all of these parents are committing acts of child abuse here. So here's some of the video. Here's a child who obviously looks overjoyed to be at a drag show, walking alongside a man in women's clothing with fake boobs, walking alongside a small child. This kid, how old do you think this kid is? 9, maybe? 8, 9 at most?
This is the Drag the Kids to Pride event at Mr. Mister's in Dallas's Oaklawn neighborhood. Organizers promoted it as a family-friendly drag show where kids danced with the performers.
I don't believe that I should be seeing signs advertising for children to be dancing on stage with men in thongs and in inappropriate clothing and makeup.
The organizers say today was a family-friendly event with a safe environment separate from their normal operations.
Okay, and if you can't see the video, this is a drag performer in what appears to be like a bondage stripper outfit, gyrating up and down, and behind this drag performer is a sign that says it's not going to lick itself. And so, people on the right cover this. You'll get some local coverage. Is it a national news story? Not a national news story, because the legacy media will never cover this as a national news story. Even though the simple fact of the matter is, this sort of stuff is happening in areas all over the country. And we are told by the left that don't worry, sexual indoctrination and confusion of children is not happening. And that if you try to bar it from public schools, this makes you a bigot. The right is covering this sort of stuff. No wonder they want to shut it down, because any parent with half a brain, gay, straight, or otherwise, looks at this and goes, this is not appropriate for kids. Are you out of your damned minds? What is wrong with you people? Like what? This has nothing to do with the sexual orientation of the parents or friends or what you think about things like gay marriage. Why are children attending a gay bar with men dressed up as women strippers in front of a sign reading, it's not going to lick itself? How is that possibly appropriate or okay? But this is why the media have to argue in favor of censorship of right-wing sources, because the minute that stuff becomes public, it gets very, very ugly for folks on the left. So this is why you should be deeply suspicious, by the way, when you see politicians like Kathy Hochul in New York making the case that social media should shut down, quote unquote, hateful content. I think your definition of hateful content may be wildly different from my definition of hateful content.
And in the state of New York, we're now requiring social media networks to monitor and report hateful conduct on their platforms. Thank you, Senator Anna Kaplan, and thank you, Assigned Member Patricia Fahey.
Okay, so I'm just wondering what exactly the hateful conduct is. If we are talking about them monitoring people threatening to shoot people, all in. Sounds great. If we are talking about people saying, for example, that a man is a man and a woman is a woman, which is, I think, what Democrats are mostly talking about, I have suspicions about what exactly it is that you want to do with free speech. I mean, especially coming from Kathy Hochul, who has publicly said the First Amendment should be limited on behalf of, quote unquote, marginalized communities. Well, Democrats believe that January 6th was the key threat to American democracy. But you know what actually a threat to American democracy is? What if I told you that pretty much the entire monetary future of the country was centralized in the hands of a few idiots who sit at a central bank and then decide how much your money is worth? Well, you know, it turns out the Fed is realizing the dire straits our economy is in thanks to our loose monetary policy that they created. Apparently, you can't just spend trillions of dollars every year with no repercussions. So now to play catch up, the Fed has been raising rates. They plan to do so 7 times this year. They're already starting to see those ripple effects in the housing market as people's buying power diminishes. Have you considered what could happen in the stock market if the economy stalls out? Well, don't wait until that happens. Take some of your profits from the stock market right now, solidify them with gold from Birch Gold. Throughout history, gold has maintained value better than any other property in the entire world. Text BEN to 989898 for a free, zero obligation info kit on holding gold in a tax-sheltered retirement account. It's worth diversifying. It's just that simple. You've been told this by investment advisors over and over. Diversify at least a little bit into precious metals. Text BEN to 989898. Secure the gains you've made while you can. I am a customer of Birch Gold, along with thousands of others with countless 5-star reviews and A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. I trust the professionals over at Birch Gold. Text BEN to 989898. Protect your future with gold today. Again, text BEN to 989898. Get started today. I trust the folks at Birch Gold. I think you will too. Ask all your questions, get all your answers, and then diversify at least a little bit into the material that's always worth something. Text BEN to 989898. Protect your future with Birch Gold. Meanwhile, it's not just these power games the left is playing. Again, when they start to lose, they got to change the rules. So you got Eric Holder, the former Attorney General of the United States. Remember that it was supposedly Bill Barr and Jeff Sessions who were doing the dirty work of the president. This man, as Attorney General, not only covered up for a gun-running operation in Fast and Furious, Eric Holder openly declared himself the wingman of the President of the United States, and that was considered totally appropriate by our legacy media. He was telling Jonathan Capehart on Washington Post Live, he said, you know, what we really need is for the political minority to have less power in this country because they're controlling everything. That means we're in danger of political apartheid. This sort of language, by the way, is insane. Political apartheid, like in which Black Americans are second-class citizens, it's so historically ignorant. It's so governmentally foolish. But again, you're losing. Change the rules.
We are in danger of slipping into what I would call a political apartheid system, where a minority of the people in this country will have disproportionate amounts of power and be able to put in place things that are not supported by the majority.
I do love the fact that Democrats are now very much in favor of majoritarianism when it was majoritarianism in certain areas of the country that led to actual apartheid. It was majoritarianism in the South that led to actual apartheid. The point is that individual rights protected by the Constitution of the United States and systems of checks and balances are supposed to protect minorities. That's like the historical ignorance of saying, what if a majority just said what it wants to do, but only if the majority's on our side, it's so governmentally ignorant. It is so historically stupid. Or, for example, you got Jamie Raskin. Right? We tend to lose, so why not change? Let's dump the Electoral College to get rid of these things. I mean, these things are an obstacle to us doing what we want. It's all a power game.
I've taken a position that the Electoral College is an undemocratic relic of the early Constitution, just like the state legislature's selection of U.S. senators, which is something we got rid of in 1913. With the 17th Amendment, just like the exclusion of women from voting, which we got rid of in 1920 in the 19th Amendment. But we do still have what I think are some obsolescent political institutions in the country, and certainly some obsolescent political practices.
So it's time to get rid of those political practices, right? What if we just ban Daily Wire from social media or restrict social media more generally? What if we get rid of the Electoral College? What if we change the rules of the debate so the filibuster goes away, but only when Democrats are in charge? When Republicans are in charge, we put the filibuster right back in again. What if we do everything we can do to shift the rules of the game? And what if the compliant media do all of our dirty work for us? Wouldn't that be great? At this point, you should be thinking to yourself, wait a second, aren't they having hearings about threats to democracy? Aren't they suggesting that the gravest threat to democracy was a bunch of droogs who went into the Capitol building and held up the business of the government for approximately 3 hours? Aren't they saying that's the threat to democracy? And then simultaneously saying, what if we restrict free speech on social media? What if we get rid of the Electoral College? What if we go ahead and get rid of any sort of protections for political minorities in the country? What if we do all those things? Who's the threat to democracy here? One of the reasons that you guys aren't going to succeed with the case that you're making about January 6th is because people look at the way that you rig the institutions in this country. They look at the way that you try to change the rules. They look at the way that you try to target your political opposition for outright destruction, and they say to themselves, wait a second, I don't think that you have any ground to stand on when you talk about threats to democracy. Because the answer is both. The answer is yes, it's a threat to democracy when people storm the Capitol building and try to hold up the workings of government. That is a one-time 3-hour threat to democracy, and it really isn't even that because it was cleared very quickly. Doesn't mean it wasn't ugly, doesn't mean it wasn't criminal. It was not a threat to the working order of the United States in any serious way. You know it's a far graver threat? The takeover of every American institution and the attempt to change the rules to prevent these sort of political conversations that make for a working republic. That is a threat to democracy, and that's what you guys are pursuing each and every day. I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Ben Shapiro Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you stay up to date with all our future content.